Per usual, everything on this channel is for educational purposes only. It is not intended as financial advice. Let's take a look at some alts today. Some pretty interesting charts on the USD side, but what's more interesting to me and what's seemingly uninteresting to too many people is the amount of ETF flows we're seeing here. BlackRock in the blue has been ramping up. I think that's an all-time high day yesterday for them at nearly $500 million in inflows in one day. Net inflows almost at an all-time high at $631 billion. I've said it before, I'll say it again. If your alt doesn't have an ETF, it's probably going to lag BTC. I say probably because I know there are coins that are doing quite well. And you can see that by just pulling up the chart, right? Some of these I'm going to talk about against BTC. The ones that I don't, that's your homework. Check them out versus BTC. Inevitably, a lot of these alts are going to run percentage-wise farther than BTC. Eventually, right? As far as where I get this info, far side, by midnight EST, they usually have these values out. Now that I've lost and angered most of the alt crowd, let me talk about BTC a little bit more because you need BTC to do well for alts to continue to do well. BTC outperforming, I think, anybody's expectations as far as where this could go. The cloud knew, the cloud told you bullish TK cross, even with price all the way up here. The question I'm getting a lot is, I missed the move. Where do I get in? The answer is always going to be the same. It's always going to be somewhere on the daily Tenkin, the blue line, or the Kijun. And you will likely be waiting a little bit of time here before we retrace to those levels. So what I would do, if it were me, not investment advice, not financial advice, I would DCA at any price. Okay, take 25% of the stack. Just start DCAing every day, every week. And the rest of it, you just have to put bids on the levels, right? So maybe you put another 25% on the Tenkin. Each day you're going to check that, or you're going to move it up. Another 50% of it on the Kijun. Each day as it moves up, you're going to move it up. There's going to be a time eventually here where we retrace a little bit, inevitably, along with Legacy, which is also still screaming after the CPI print that was hotter than expectations. But trend-wise, this looks good. What you don't want to do is overly massage this and say, oh, it looks overbought. We can't keep going higher. Well, if BlackRock has $500 million in inflows every day, we can go higher. The current 8-hour trailing stop loss based on the fractals is 48.3, which is admittedly pretty far down below current price. So I've closed a little bit more up here. I've been shaving off a little bit, like 10%. 10% here, 10% there off the position. Up here, I took off 25%. We're pretty close to the yearly pivot, and we are also inside of, I'll go to this one first. We're inside of this ascending broadening wedge. I'm not a massive megaphone fan, but this is a bearish pattern potentially that could break down. And this is where people who are sitting on the sidelines would get in, right? If you're sitting on the sidelines, you want to see us break 50. This probably would measure to somewhere around 46, maybe. I don't see us actually breaking down that far, but it's possible. It's possible. The other thing here on the 4-hour would be the bear div. And we can look at other versions. I found this one, 1992, the Barrick Gold. This is a gold miner, okay? Doesn't really matter what it is, but the point here is, yes, this pattern is a known pattern. It happens a lot. It's typically breaks bearish. It doesn't typically break bullish. What you'll notice here is we had many more touches of these support resist lines. It did have a little bit of a double top to give you like a second chance to get out. That's always something to watch for. But this did break down. It eventually went higher, but it did break down, right? So something similar along these lines. It's certainly possible on the BTC side. There was another one that cropped up in my Googling with S&P, which I certainly don't think wasn't there. It certainly looked also like head and shoulders up here. It just didn't matter, right? This was in 2021. Maybe stimmy related. I can't exactly remember. Probably liquidity related, right? But this clearly didn't break down and kept going. So the question you should always ask anybody who is bullish or bearish is, where are you wrong? Where can you be wrong? This can always go higher, right? One other thing to consider would be this potential huge megaphone on the 12-hour. If this is bullish, then you take this measured move and project it higher from the breakout, whatever that is, I don't even know, probably close to 60K. Something else that I talked about on Monday would be cup and handle as well. And so if you're trading alts, it's just important to just take a peek at Bitcoin for 5 seconds and have an opinion. Because if Bitcoin breaks to 46, alts are going to get absolutely smashed. Absolutely smashed. But that's also a good time to get into alts maybe that you haven't gotten into. And then something else to consider down the line relative to rates, relative to animal spirits, relative to the junk that Kathy keeps in this ETF. This is like your altcoin, alt season barometer. Once this is out of the weekly cloud, sometime probably at the end of Q4 this year, rates are probably down. We're probably not in a recession. We're stimulating because of the election. All sorts of reasons why this probably goes higher. Seasonality, right? But if ARK is moving from, let's say, 50 to 75 plus, alts are probably doing very well. So just another one just kind of put on your watch list, because if you look at what's in here, it's kind of the riskiest side of the spectrum, much like alts. A couple weeks ago now, I talked about this screener I did through TradingView. I did a whole video on it. I'll link that in the description. But what I was looking for at that time were extremely large cloud edge-to-edge trades on the weekly. And you can figure this out with math. You can extract the cloud values, the crypto cloud values, and then do some math. Okay, so I did a recent version of that just now. It takes about 10 minutes. Like, it doesn't take a long time, and it really saves you from flipping through all these charts trying to figure out what to do if you're looking for massive cloud setups. And when you select for some specific criteria, a few things fall away. DOGE immediately caught my eye. That's in the top 10. Leo, I'm not going to touch. I can't touch. I'm a US citizen. Wi-Fi, I'm never going to touch. Trust Wallet Token, I'm not going to touch. So these are basically edge-to-edge ready charts. Waves I won't look at today, but DOGE I will. Some of these others below that, not in the cloud yet, but ready to get in the cloud. And I sorted this by top 250 by market cap. I took out anything that didn't give me a weekly cloud, anything that was already below the cloud. So here's no weekly cloud. Here's stables and scams. I'm not going to touch any of this stuff ever. And it really gives you, what is this, like 25 different alts here? It's okay. So it's 41 alts, not many to flip through or choose from as far as the thousands that are out there, right? So even with a screener, there are plenty of pretty large payoff charts on the weekly that haven't moved yet, that probably move later in the year, but definitely something to keep an eye on. As far as liquidity inside of the ecosystem, stables have kind of flattened out here. They're slowly being issued. We're not seeing mega chunks get issued, but alts benefit from stablecoin issuance. So it's always good to check, are we issuing a bunch of stablecoin? Not really. I mean, there's some wealth effect here with Bitcoin being up so much. That's going to help alts. But again, Bitcoin needs to not break down for alts to do best. Dominance looks like it's ready for highs. The weekly cloud likes it. Dominance typically does worst post-halving because alts typically do best. If there's anything that could disrupt that, it would be continuous passive flows via ETFs. This may be the cycle where, yes, alts do really well, but they don't perform broadly better than Bitcoin. Broadly, we may see dominance continue to go to 60, 70, 80, right? It's not out of the question if money starts flooding into Bitcoin in a crazier way than we've even seen so far. Like, things are just getting started, and this has a ways to go, but on trend, this looks okay. If we want to look at the inverse of that, total 2 over BTC taking out stables, this is also not bullish, right? This is not bullish broadly for alts. We may see alts come all the way back down to the 2020 consolidation range before moving again, and then post-halving, maybe something happens. But as it stands here, this looks like it wants to continue to go lower. We may end up printing an inverted head and shoulders here. We may decide to go into a high time frame cloud, but this is telling me focus my attention on Bitcoin here, not alts. So Bitcoin looks super strong broadly. ETH finally waking up. I don't know what it took. I accidentally left it out of the Monday video. I left it out of the Tuesday video. It wasn't moving. It was just out of my head, as far as a trade I could even comment on because I had anything to say, but it's still in the weekly cloud. It's still chugging along. 29 would be the top of the weekly cloud. It's at the yearly pivot. The ascending triangle target is between 27 and 32. All this looks fine. Very little VPVR resistance on the way up. Eventually, money's going to flow into ETH just based on relative value. It's high on the market cap list. Everybody knows what it is. Everybody has it. It's got infrastructure. It's got DeFi. It's got a pulse, right? I don't know if it's going to outperform SOL this cycle. I don't know if it's going to outperform BTC. I doubt it. But the USD pair should continue to do pretty well here up until the R2 yearly pivot at 3,200. On the daily, you also got a bullish TK recross with price above cloud. Again, all this stuff is kind of setting up similarly as far as potential for a cup and handle potentially as this may reverse. Higher time frame stuff, we've got a pitchfork from 2019, still valid. We're still holding at those lows in the very bottom of that support resist diag level. And basically this is calling for a return to the mean, which would be all-time highs pretty easily over the long term. This cycle, I like ETH to 10K. I don't know where BTC goes in that scenario. So again, you may be underperforming BTC by quite a bit, but sure, why not? Let's do another 4X on ETH on the USD side. ETH BTC continues to hold below the 200-week moving average, continues to hold below the weekly cloud, continues to largely remain in this sort of parabolic downside. It attempted a 1-week reversal and just couldn't hold on to those levels. Never a good sign. I do think eventually this tries to go lower along with everything else on the BTC pairs. There is a potential case to be made here on RSI, something I just finally noticed just because I was glancing over at it. But I talked, I think, on Monday about RSI and how we tend to get these curves throughout the trend, right? You know, it looks strong early in the trend, you get overbought, then you get bear divs, and then as the trend weakens, RSI curls down. This could be the start of a new, RSI trend. Time will tell if we actually hold these levels. But based on flows, I wouldn't bet money on it personally at the moment. Yes, ETH is probably getting an ETF this year. Maybe it's May. Maybe it's pushed back. Is it staked? I don't know. Does it even matter if it gets approved? Is it enough to have the potential of approval to overperform BTC, right? Maybe. I don't think so. But until ETH has provable flows, because that's the next thing. We can have 10,000 products, but if nobody wants to buy this stuff, who cares, right? So it could be a while before ETH BTC figures it out. So keep that in mind. Now, if we want to think about different types of trades, okay, here's 2 different types of trades around ETH. ETH is still a viable option. It's got a 12%, 14% discount here, similarly placed in the weekly cloud. So that's certainly an option. And then if we want to go dumpster diving, ETCG, which probably won't ever get converted, at least probably not this year, also in the weekly cloud, has a 40 to 50% discount at any given time. It's one of the last remaining Grayscale products with a heavy discount. FTX has a ton of it. Genesis has a ton of it. Okay, so there's issues with this trade in this setup, but it's an idea. ETC similarly looks very strong. I've talked about it before. Adam and Eve, it's in the cloud, bullish TK cross. I like 100. Okay, something silly like that. Post having Q4 this year. ETC to 100. If you're holding this, are you going to underperform everything else? Quite possibly. I wouldn't go large into something like that, but just as a trade idea, it's something to think about. SOL on the weekly pulled up quite nicely from the yearly pivot. Still in the weekly cloud. 137 is the top of the weekly cloud. So that would be the interim target along with 149 on the yearly pivot. It's still, it's got a ways to go to get safely out of the cloud with a bullish cloud underneath its feet because the broader ecosystem is quite bullish. I don't think it's going to 32. I don't think that is on the table anymore, but I could see like 150 back to 79 or something between now and 2025. If we have some sort of sell-off on BTC, again, I don't think we will because I think the flows are just going to take over here. There's also this possibility for a mega cup and handle. There's a possibility for this like tiny shouldered, inverted head and shoulders. Bullish bias tends to take over when you have a chart that looks like this. We had it on Bitcoin in 2015, 2016, 2017, So where could SOL go this cycle? I don't know, maybe another 10x from here. I literally have no idea. But I like 150 in the near term-ish. It's also got a bullish TK cross in the cloud on the daily. It's also got this inverted head and shoulders it's coming out of. So all this stuff looks great to me from a bullish perspective. SOL against BTC, still in a bullish trend. We'll see if this leads to bullish continuation for SOL. against BTC, but it does look pretty good here against BTC, right? One of the few that looks good against BTC. Against ETH, it also looks pretty good. What I'd watch for here is, does this break the yearly pivot? Because if it breaks the yearly pivot, then that would signal some sort of inverted Adam and Eve or a similar, like head and shoulders type of pattern that it had at this level in 2021, which is possible. But if you're trading in between these two, which I think a lot of people are, I would definitely keep an eye on this chart just to see where the likely strength is broadly. You don't have to top tick and bottom tick everything on the relative values, but you don't want to be in ETH when you're getting this mega breakout right on the 3-day cloud, for instance. So the cloud would suggest you don't want to be in Sol relative to ETH if this breaks the 3-day cloud, right? You just want to avoid being on the wrong side of the big trends for this stuff. Doge is one that I got to admit, I'm ready to just YOLO some position because Ponk has moved, all this other stuff has moved. Doge is still in the zeitgeist. It's a coin, right? It's broadly listed. It looks pretty good. It has a bullish TK cross on the weekly. Maybe 2x, right? Maybe 10 to 20 cents would be reasonable. Clearly has some sort of multi-year consolidation here. It wouldn't surprise me if one day we just wake up and, it's at 13 cents or something for some stupid reason. This is the type of chart where things tend to happen. The rest of the L1s are all on some various journey of being above the cloud with a bullish TK cross or not, right? If I flip between all these and you're just looking at the cloud fractals, they're all kind of about the same. So if we go back to DOT, bullish Kumo breakout, not a TK cross yet. Rune, bullish Kumo breakout, not a TK cross yet. AVAX, well above cloud, Kijun, Tenkin, not a bullish TK cross yet. Also has an inverted head and shoulders. Looks pretty good, honestly. ADA similar. Inverted head and shoulders here, above the cloud. We'll get a bullish TK cross soon. So all of these are tradable. You just have to dodge BTC potentially retracing a little bit. But all these look good. Atom looks okay. It's trying to cancel this broader head and shoulders pattern here, but if everything else is bullish, eventually this will pull up. It's just, again, I know people ask me about this because they're probably sitting in this and have been sitting in this for a while. They don't want to rotate anything. They don't want to change their positioning. I'm not trying to convince you to do that, but there is an opportunity cost with holding stuff like this over the stronger stuff. Filecoin should eventually push itself into the weekly cloud here. Still don't have a bullish TK cross, but much like Doge, this is where weird stuff tends to happen because we're talking 2 years of accumulation potentially, 2 years of bottoming. I don't know if this goes to 40, 50, 80, 160. I don't know, but it looks good enough at this point where sure, I have some Filecoin, okay? Not a lot, but I have some Filecoin. STX is one alt other than Sol that has actually kind of spanked the pants off of BTC a little bit on the BTC side. This is, I don't know if it's fair to call it a Bitcoin layer 2, but it's a Bitcoin adjacent product. We'll call it like that. Mega inverted head and shoulders here through the weekly cloud. It looks great. It's going to have a weekly bullish Kumo twist here pretty soon. Probably you're going to see all-time highs fairly shortly. Very strong chart for sure. And on the BTC side, similar. Very strong trend emerging potentially, and it's getting ready, gearing up for all-time highs against BTC probably this cycle. One thing you could also watch for here if this breaks down a little bit would be a multi-month, multi-year ascending triangle. If you just draw a diagonal support here with a resistance line. If you're bullish against BTC on this, you have to dodge that possibility, but still looks very good in the near term. TIA starting to creep out of its trend channel, let's call it. It's not fair to use yearly pivots on this because there wasn't a full year of trading, but that's what these are. I think if you're trading this stuff, you're either holding it forever, like the next 6 to 12 months, or you're just selling it, right? Because inevitably you are going to be a VC's exit liquidity who got in this thing at sub $1. Okay, that's just the reality. Unless there's people using this thing right now with provable on-chain metrics or TVL or something, then I think it's going to be hard to hold this at this price. Just because I'm sure so many people are up thousands or hundreds of %, right? So unless this breaks down below the 12-hour cloud, you're probably fine. It's done quite well since December. I think for a lot of people who make a lot on something, on a new listing, they like the story, they like the quote unquote fundamentals. I think it's hard for them to take profit early in something. So you can always take partial profit, right? Just take your money out. Let's say you're up 3,000%. Take your initial capital out, hold it for the next 6 months, the rest of it, and just forget about it, right? Or hold it, have some level. Let's say, I'm going to sell at 10, regardless of what happens. That's my stop loss. But from here on out, I'm just going to hold on to this thing. Just one way to think about that trade. OP on the weekly, don't really have a cloud here yet. Still potentially in some sort of markup phase. It had its ascending triangle, falling wedge maybe on lower time frames, and now it's trying to break out again. It looks fine. As long as ETH is doing fine, the ETH beta is going to do fine. I don't think it's going to go the other way. So as long as ETH is rising, then stuff like OP should do well. Now we're getting to the latter few charts here that I wouldn't recommend touching with the 25-foot pole, but we'll talk about them. BEAMX, multi-month consolidation, breakout. Measured move of the consolidation would be 3 to 4 cents. So potentially ways to go here just on the initial breakout. DIM, same thing, multi-day breakout, right? Different time frame duration, but same type of idea based on the fractal. 920 to 977 would be the range. Target there. Woo, similar to OP, where it had this consolidation mess over and over and over again, finally broke out, and now it's sort of in its markup phase where it is bullish, wants to continue higher. So it looks okay, right? Is it going to overperform on something else? I have no idea, but it looks okay. Imagine image generation, maybe some AI thing. This has looked pretty bearish on the 12-hour cloud since the end of last year. Might be setting itself up for a inverted head and shoulders down here. Anything above 3 cents, and you're probably good to go into March, but still leans bearish, but it's setting up for a move higher. Then lastly, Rollbit. Maybe this is a megaphone down here. Maybe it's eventually going to be a diamond bottom. I don't really know. Again, I wouldn't touch this stuff. Any exchange coin, just personally, not for me. Too risky. And I'm sure this is underperforming basically everything. That's all I have for this one. Like, dislike, comment, share, subscribe.